stroll along the beach should be a relaxing way to get away from it all and commune with nature. But for residents in Nova Scotia, it's recently turned into a horror show. A warning to our viewers, some of these images may be disturbing, and they're absolutely puzzling. While walking along the rocky coastline of Sambro, Nova Scotia in April of 2021, Jeffrey Howard came upon a disturbing sight.
Got a little curious, wanted to go check it out, and was surprised to find a headless seal.
And not just one, there were more, lots more.
I look over and there's another seal floating in the tidal pool. And it was 10 minutes of kind of shock of realizing, oh, this is a lot more than just a single animal that died naturally and washed up. On the coast, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands more.
Of course, it's well known that seals have natural predators, killer whales among them, and of course, great white sharks.
The great white shark in recent years has been extending its range into far northern waters. There are a number of theories regarding global warming and climate change that may be driving these sharks to move into sort of unfamiliar territory.
When an oceanic apex predator kills a seal, you're bound to find bite marks on the carcass like this. Who just eats the head?
The head wouldn't necessarily provide nutrition, not so much that they would only eat the head and leave the body. I don't really know any animals that would just eat an animal's head.
Now, people have been reporting large sea beasts in this part of the country since before it was a country. The Mi'kmaq tribe spoke of a horned underwater serpent named Jeepakam. But researcher Ken Gerhardt, who studies water monsters, believes humans are responsible.
There are documented examples of commercial fishermen that have killed seals because they basically affect the amount of fish that they're able to, they're competitors. The other possibility could be something more diabolical and sinister, something like a serial killer or some type of cult that was looking to do animal mutilation.
This mystery isn't just about the strange appearance of the carcasses. It's the sheer number of them. Dozens of animals with only their heads missing. The concern, if someone is killing seals so bizarrely, could they soon move on to humans? Let's see if our experts can find the culprit before the culprit finds us. We started by asking wildlife biologist Stephanie Shuttler if there's any way a natural predator like a shark could be responsible.
It is possible that sharks went after seals and they weren't able to consume the whole seal for some reason. Something interrupted their predatory behavior.
But the seals were in different stages of decomposition. How likely is it that a shark feeding frenzy was interrupted on numerous separate occasions?
The fact that it only seems to be heads all happening at the same time suggests that there's something more calculated is going on.
Let's consider the next suspect in our lineup, humans.
There were some incidences recently of humans regularly injuring pelicans by slicing part of their neck. So unfortunately, this could be the work of humans.
Before settling on that disturbing conclusion, we contacted Dr. Gary Stinson, a research scientist with the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans, to shed some light on the subject.
What happens with a lot of these animals is that when they're born, they don't really have the ability to swim 24/7, so they need an area where they can haul out, and they haul out on ice. So in the springs, that ice is breaking up. Those animals, especially the young, will get dumped into the water and they'll drown.
Thing is, nursing seals build up a hefty layer of fat, which is beneficial for a living seal, but horror-inducing in a dead one.
You have a body that's encased in this blubber. On the other end, you've got this skull that's quite heavy. And so the weakest point is the neck. And so you've got this very, very heavy head. And as the body starts to decompose, it ends up falling off. And you get what looks like headless seals.
Humans may not be personally beheading these seals, but this could be an unintentional consequence of our actions. Our verdict? Naturally occurring decomposition of seals that drown due to thinning ice. April 2021, East Sussex, England. University lecturer Chris Hogg is going on his usual morning bike ride. What Chris doesn't know is that this bike ride is going to turn into a real head trip.
I'm getting closer and closer to what I suddenly realize is sheep. And I'm like, what is that? And why are they in these kind of concentric circles? And normally they're really, like, sheep are noisy, but they were just absolutely silent.
So what or who is the cause for these weird sheep and their eccentric, concentric behavior?
If I didn't know better, I would call this a living crop circle.
While the concept of crop circles may have originated with a series of hoaxes in the 70s and 80s, similar reports go back centuries, and some of the latest crop circles are so mathematically precise, many theorize that they are encoded messages from extraterrestrial forces.
When you see something this odd, you have to ask yourself the question, are we dealing with perhaps some form of non-human intelligence that are controlling these sheep?
This wouldn't be the first case of crop circle via animal. About a decade ago, crop circles were springing up all over Tasmania, Australia. The culprit? Frenzied wallabies hopping in circles, almost as if someone else was controlling them. And what about this wild and woolly sheep incident?
Historically, there was an incident that happened back in 1888 called the Great Sheep Panic. This is where sheep, thousands of them, at the same time, they got up and they just fled. They went crazy.
The cause of that incident is still up for debate today. As for our East Sussex herd,
whatever caused these sheep to act in unison, something powerful triggered them.
whether you think all crop circles are hoaxes or you're already at work decoding them, you've got to admit, these sheep certainly seem to be up to something. Let's turn to our experts to find out if this flock is being manipulated by extraterrestrial forces or if someone is trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Dr. Stephanie Shuttler says the wallaby crop circles have more to do with the crops than the circles.
They were eating poppy plants and they got high and were jumping around in circles that made these patterns.
But biologist Floyd Hayes doesn't think an opium high accounts for the strange behavior of the English sheep.
I don't think there's any evidence that they're drugged. I think if they were really not feeling well, they'd probably be sprawled out on the ground, but they're all standing alert, so they appear to be healthy.
So, is there a chance these sheep circles could be perfectly natural?
So a lot of prey species will gather together as a defense against predators, especially in open areas like this, and they will form circular shapes. What's really odd about this, though, is that the circles seem to be perfectly shaped and evenly spaced apart. So this is something that you really wouldn't see naturally happen.
Shuttler looks closer and notes that most of the sheep have their heads down, like they're eating. For her, that clue is the key to this mystery.
What's really going on is these sheep are just eating, and the food that they were given was laid out in this circular pattern. The sheep are therefore making this formation just because that's where the food is.
Chris Hogg arrived at the same conclusion. He decided to investigate after taking this photo and track down the farmer.
I was like, have you seen what the sheep are doing? And he looks over and goes, yes, I fed them in that shape.
So we've solved the mystery. It seems that the way to a sheep's mind is through its stomach. Our verdict? These strange sheep circles were simply a byproduct of a specific feeding method. May 2021. Canadian resident Rob connects with Chris from Utah on a video chat. The two met on a Facebook group that explores the idea of possible extrasensory powers. Chris claims to have one particularly shocking ability.
There you go.
With a piece of foil on one finger, Chris holds up a light bulb and presses the end, and suddenly is able to make it light up without any wires.
Turn it all around everywhere so people can see there's nothing anywhere. Perfect.
The two got together to talk to us.
I was skeptical.
I got him to take his camera and show it all around because I was wondering if there was some kind of a static generator or a Tesla coil, but there wasn't.
Chris says this extraordinary ability was taught to him by a man in South America who honed this power through years of meditation.
We're like a capacitor or a battery. That's what my teacher taught me. All I'm doing is I'm gathering an abundance of negative ions from the atmosphere and charging my body with it. So I create a voltage differential. And so what you're seeing most of it is static discharge.
Now, does that hurt, Chris?
Oh, it drains.
It's physical exercises like moving his muscles in a certain way, breathing a certain way, and it creates a charge.
It pulls negative ions out of the air. So the negative ions in his body are going through the bulb, lighting it up, and then they pass on their way to ground and discharge to the ground. You know, it's really just about physics.
Now, the average human produces about 100 watts of electricity at rest, but we generally lack the ability to focus that energy into a consistent current. So how is Chris able to do this? Let's ask the experts. So, of course, our first question, is this just a clever trick? Mick West thinks the answer is yes.
He's actually got a little bit of foil on the end of one finger. If you look at a regular light bulb, you see it's got one contact in the middle and then the other contact where the screws are. And electricity normally flows across those. But if you stick a battery and a small bulb inside the light bulb, you can actually create a trick light bulb that will light up when touching a bit of aluminum foil to the two contacts. And I think that's all that's going on here.
But maybe that's not how the trick's done.
Wow.
Dr. Hakeem Olushehi says it may be possible he's not collecting ions from the air, but that he's conducting the electricity coming from somewhere else.
Our bodies are 50% water, and the water in our bodies is a pretty good conductor of electricity. The body can hold a voltage if he's directly connected to a source of power, and he can transfer that voltage to the bulb, causing it to illuminate.
It's not out of the question, then, that Chris is hoaxing us by hooking himself up to a low-voltage current.
Contact, yeah.
But even a small sustained amount could have damaging effects.
A current going through your body, particularly if it goes through the heart, it'll upset the heart's rhythms. So the first question may be, how are they surviving this?
Ow!
When we talked to Chris and Rob, they insisted no wires or trick bulbs were involved, and even demonstrated this power in a new way.
Let me hold your hand, okay? And I'm gonna take the bulb and I'm gonna touch it to the ground of the table. There it is. There we go. If you look around the table, there's nothing attached to the table. There's nothing attached to Chris. It's not a trick light bulb. I can't make it go on by touching it. No way, no how. But if I grab his hand, then I can do it. Ow!
Our experts were pretty convinced this was a hoax, but even though we weren't with Chris and Rob in person, their demonstration was pretty convincing. Since we can't explain how he's doing it, we're gonna call this an unexplained trick. October 2018. Jason Asselin is giving friends a tour along the shores of Lake Superior near Marquette, Michigan.
As we're walking along the lakeshore, I heard somebody gasp, and I looked over and I saw them pointing out into the water and said, "What is that out there?"
Jason pulls out his camera and starts recording. There's what appears to be a tall and large object on the horizon, so let's take a closer look. The object is gray in color, but the shape appears pretty blurry. Jason and his friends think it might be a ship.
This ship would have had to have been hundreds of feet into the air. We never thought that it was a ghost ship at the time, but when I got home and watched the video, that's all I could think of. We just saw a ghost ship.
Since the late 1800s, there have been hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks that have occurred on Lake Superior. It's definitely a dangerous patch of water that is essential for trade, but very risky to travel on.
From the SS Western Reserve in 1892 to the Hudson in 1901, many large freighters have sunk in bad weather, only to be seen again, allegedly plying the waters long after a tragic wreck.
According to local legend, one of the most famous ships to have gone down is the SS Bannockburn. Locals call it the Flying Dutchman of Lake Superior, and people still claim to see it to this day.
That's a reference to the legendary Flying Dutchman, the doomed 17th century ship that's been sighted and spoken of for centuries. Jason can't help but wonder if this is the mysterious phenomenon he's captured on camera.
We just witnessed something out of this world.
There's a poem about the world's most famous phantom ship with the line, "They who see the Flying Dutchman never, never reach the shore. But when it comes to getting answers, never say never." Here's what we found. First, science writer and forensic video analyst Mick West focuses on the shape of the object in Jason's video. He notes that most famous shipwrecks in Lake Superior are freighters with steam engines. This looks different.
It looks like a sail ship. I don't know whether they have big sail ships on the Great Lakes, but that's what it looks like, and if that's unexpected, then that's a clue that it's not actually a ship.
Next, the team considers another possibility. Physicist Dr. Michio Kaku says it might be a mirage.
A mirage is caused by temperature inversion, and dense air bends light more than hot air.
A temperature inversion can make images below the horizon visible, distorted in the distance. So could the weather be causing this effect? Atmospheric scientist Dr. Deanna Hintz looked at the data the day the sighting happened and sees just such an inversion.
The temperature is decreasing and it's actually getting closer to zero. So this is that temperature inversion that can lead to that warm air sitting on top of cold air. This can actually really change how light can propagate through the atmosphere.
Then Mick West tries to put the pieces together. Could a temperature inversion have distorted something that is already there? Turns out, there's a small island 12 miles offshore in this area that's normally hard to see.
Up above, we have a view of the island. So this is the direction we're looking from. So I just simply lined up the lighthouse here in the top with the lighthouse down here. So that lines up perfectly.
So what is that thing? The key for us was the temperature data and that island. Our verdict, mirage. A temperature inversion caused an island that's usually a bump on the horizon to look like a phantom ship.